this is how we came up with a short list, actually, not very long list of products, which we decided to support. For instance, bay leaves was one of them. So bay leaves for local production because of climatic reasons, because of relevant number of hectares we have to produce this raw material, because of potential of processors and prospect of their improvement. And so actually at the end of the day we had very good partnership between farmers, between private sector and between public sector.
Perhaps I ask Marina to complement with the private sector perspective on this point.
Yes, about the identification, well, private sector can identify itself. If I know that some new program is implemented, I will let them know that I exist. At the recent practice, I also know that when program is implemented, public sector is calling through example of the list of the private representatives and let them know that this kind of project starting to be implemented. So if they are fulfilling some criteria, they participate. The criteria for, in my case, was increased effectiveness and productivity. For example, I was producing this much. I need to produce after participation in program and after funding. I need to produce, for example, 3 times more. Of course, it means that I will engage with local producers. But except only the increased effectiveness, I also took a bargain of social responsibility for myself. I can sometimes give up the effectiveness, but I will be sure that elderly or disabled
but because, for instance, this concrete commodity has continuous demand and growing market, actually this will support the sustainability for this partnership.
I just want to flag that I am interested also, they are interested also in your criteria to select the farmers, not only the enterprises or the products. Because one of the questions this morning was about targeting, and I think it's an important one. There was a question about whether the poorest can be involved, if so, how? So please also refer to this part of the question. So is there a selection of all the partners involved in the partnership? So I don't know if you want to comment on this point as well.
Yes, with pleasure. Well, first of all, we go to the areas, after we select the product, commodity, we go to the areas where it is produced in concentrated, with concentration. We see who are the producers, what gaps they have, and how can we complement these gaps? If it is knowledge gaps, if it is financial gaps, with financial gaps we tackle with our grant programs, with knowledge gap we tackle with our technical assistance, and in this dialogue we keep involved processors because they know what kind of product is sellable, so we translate it back to farmers clearly, and they are able to produce up to standard which is sellable to processor and for which they can gain more income. So processors are happy to have better quality raw material and ready to pay premiums for this better quality raw material. Farmers are happy to get this premium, and it motivates them. Practically, main thing is to see the opportunities and to show these opportunities to farmers. In this case, our bay leaf producer farmers saw this opportunity, and they started to care of their plants with better knowledge, which I believe that will reflect on the produce Marina will process further.
Okay. Thank you. Now I pass the floor to, I give the floor to Leonard on this question, both private sector and producer selection.
Thank you, moderator. In our case, we are starting with the subsector value chain analysis. That's where we identify different parties who are involved and those who are interested in getting into the 4Ps. We have criteria, and these are very specific for each category. For instance, for smallholder producer, we are looking at their willingness to participate. Are they able to contribute? Here, the smallholder producer, we are not referring to individual farmers. We are talking about the farmers' organization. In our case, we call them agricultural cooperative societies. So we have AMCOs, we have SACCOs. Not all of them are interested. So we'll be looking, we have those criteria. Are they interested? Are they willing? Are they in the relevant sector that is being supported? So this is where we are looking at it. For financial institutions, even before the project, there are already financial institutions working with farmers. We are looking at, are they willing? Do they have the relevant product? Maybe they don't have the relevant product, but they are willing. And then the programs came in one of the areas to assist this financial institution is in developing the relevant product. The same thing also applies for input suppliers. The input supplier, most of them are working with farmers, but there are limitations in terms of accessing them, having the right packages and stuff like that. So we do that assessment on individual cases so that we can identify who are willing and who are able to participate. But all in all, it ends up with the business cases. Do each of these parts has a business case that will support the other partner? That's where we are looking at it. And in terms of the number of the producers, whether they are poor or not poor, for this program, it is very specific. It is working with the active poor. So with the consortium, the good thing is that they have another opportunity of working with farmers who are well off, even others who are producing more and more. So as smallholder farmers who are active poor, whom the project is supported, is only part of the consortium who are supporting the consortium in terms of people to access the input from the producer. Thank you.
Thank you. On our part, the program was an agricultural recovery program. So people who are affected by the war, who moved from their communities, either as internally displaced persons or as refugees, were encouraged to go back to their villages. So the target was actually war-affected people, and also people who had plantations between the range of 1 to 5 hectares. We are also looking for the private sector who had the capacity to provide ready market for their produce, and also better prices to ensure that whenever the farmers produce, they have a ready market to buy their produce and then to export. The government too was very much interested because there was lack of foreign exchange. Through the purchase and the export of produce, they were able to earn some foreign exchange. So through that relationship, it was also another win-win situation. Thank you.
Thank you. So you can see that there are, again, some common patterns and some diversities. One thing I want to flag is about the process. As you can see in Vietnam and also in Tanzania, they start with this sort of value chain analysis, which is basically the starting point for then organizing these kind of platforms of actors, which then become the embryon of the 4P, the starting point of the 4P. And then after that, they can launch a call for proposals, inviting private sector to submit proposals. So, I mean, this is interesting to note because in the case of Sri Lanka, you basically go straight to the call for proposal, and because we are targeting quite large enterprises, and that's a choice that was made intentionally in the Sri Lanka case. While in other countries, in other contexts, we are also working as governments with also smaller enterprises. I think somebody of the panelists mentioned before, we don't work with large enterprises, we actually work with SMEs. I think it was the SME, the Vietnam case. So it's important to recognize these differences, because one approach can work very well in Sri Lanka because of certain conditions, not necessarily can work equally well in other contexts. So this is very important to understand. I would like to go now to a bit more on the meat of what is the 4P. I mean, what is the content or these 4Ps that we are discussing about now. So I want to ask each panelist to describe briefly what are the key activities that are included in what they call 4P in their own country. Are we referring to investment? Are we referring to training and capacity building activities? Who are the beneficiaries of these activities? Are we targeting only producers or organizational producers like was mentioned in Tanzania? Or are we also supporting directly the private sector with some direct support when the private sector is needed? So can you elaborate on this point, please?
Khi mà với cái sự hỗ trợ của dự án thì chúng tôi bắt đầu hỗ trợ với cả hai đối tượng. Cái thứ nhất là hỗ trợ cho người nông dân và cái thứ hai là vẫn phải hỗ trợ cho doanh nghiệp. Chúng tôi ví là hai cái đối tượng này như hai vợ chồng. Nếu mà có cân sức với nhau, sức khỏe có cân đối với nhau thì mới sống với nhau một cách bền vững được. Và trong cái hỗ trợ của dự án cho hai cái đối tượng này thì bao gồm cả phần cứng, tức là cái phần hỗ trợ về hạ tầng, rồi hạ tầng, rồi các cái chi phí để mà cải tạo đồng ruộng, mua máy móc, thiết bị và cũng có những cái hỗ trợ về phần mềm như là hỗ trợ kỹ thuật, rồi các cái sáng kiến cải tiến trong nông nghiệp, rồi xây dựng thương hiệu và ưu tiên các cái nghiên cứu kỹ thuật để cho hai cái đối tượng này cùng có những cái nguồn lực để cùng với nhau có thể là tham gia vào được cái chuỗi 4P.
In the framework of our project, we provide support for both private sector and farmers. We sometimes consider them like the husband and the wife, that if they are both wealthy, they can live happily with each other. The same like private sector and the farmer. So the project also comprise, in the 4P activities, comprise of both hard investment and soft technical and business development service. Like we support the traffic infrastructure to buy and help them to buy the machine and the equipment for production and business. And besides, we have we support some initiative on the business competition and productivity, profitable products, and sustainability of products, business consulting or brand development, or workshop, and some other activity like agricultural extension service. However, we also need the counterpart funds, the contribution, financial contribution from the private sector and the farmer with the rate of 50%, 50%.
So in our case, yes, as I have mentioned, we support as primary producers as well as processors, warehouse owners. So for us, actually, strong processor is strong producer and vice versa. And while supporting the producer, we put our accents not only on co-funding, but on investments in knowledge, which we believe is for long term and more sustainable. So the technical assistance and trainings have particular role in our project. And while cooperating with producers, we try to learn as much as possible about their needs in terms of transfer these needs with knowledge to farmers. So to us, I think to cooperate with both is equally important.
Marina, could you want to complement?
Yeah, well, the main activity in our case between public and private was providing finance for machinery, in my case. And what's more important, they continue to cooperate with me, providing some workshops for business to business forward, like cooperation afterwards. As for private and producer cooperation, it's like we keep each other alive, like we are interested in each other. I will provide them permanent source for income, and they will provide me always with the resources and raw materials to work in. So we complement each other.
Okay. Leonard?
Thank you, moderator. In our case, what exactly is happening? We know what are the problems with the different partners. So what the platform is doing is first to bring them together, so that they can trade. And the first thing that a service provider, who I didn't mention earlier, we have a service provider who is a private sector involved in bringing together all these other parties after all the exercise of analysis and identifying what are the specific issues. So what they do is, this is an agricultural intervention. So at the top of the season, so we have even the timing when we start this consortium. At the top of the season, we have an activity of establishing, through the service provider, establishing what are the requirements for each parties within the consortium. What are they requiring? You have input supplier. Input supplier, they need to say, it all starts with the farmers. The farmers, they are presenting that this time around we have this acreage, and this is in terms of input that we are requiring so that we can produce this amount of volume. To produce this amount of volume, we need this kind of financing. And that consortium, you have financial institution, and you have input supply. We'll need this kind of financing so that we can access input. So the project is supporting all these partners first to meet together so that they can establish their needs, and the follow-up activities, including meetings with the specific partners to see that what has been agreed is followed up and is being implemented within the consortium. So we have two basically key areas happening which complemented in the 4Ps arrangement. We have the investment which the program is doing, which this is the government has trying to do is to make sure those are exploited for the 4Ps, and it is happening. We have warehouses, we have a matching grant. A matching grant is a processing facility where farmers, a group of farmers who are processors can be able to process and sell it to the off-taker. So through the 4Ps, the government has built the warehouse facilities which are being exploited. The off-takers, they use that facility to store and take the produce, but also they use another facility, which is the processors, to process their product before they reach to their destination. So there are investment which are happening within the consortium in terms of technical capacity, how to do the business planning and all this stuff, visiting just to get sure, because there is another activity which is very important in terms of due diligence and ensuring that each party is understanding the other party. The government is facilitating in terms of having those learning visits, going to the off-taker to be sure is what he's saying, he has the facility, he has the motivation. But another aspect is on the investment, the warehouse facilities and the machines. But also it is making use of other investment which the government has done in terms of construction of the road. I mentioned earlier that this program also has had the opportunity of working with the African Development Bank, which has been very much involved in the capital investment, road, warehouses, cold storage facility, and stuff like that. So this is how it works in terms of the consortium. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mohamed?
Thank you. In terms of the activities with the public and private sector, the private sector mainly provided market outlets, ensure that they provide good market prices for the produce. Also, they had to train the farmers to ensure that they had quality produce, certified and organic produce, so that they can fetch more prices. Whereas the public sector, they provided extension services, make sure that the roads leading to those various communities were rehabilitated, so that there is access to those places. They also ensure that the policies and the enabling environment were all in place to make sure that the public and the private sector can work amicably well. In some cases, they provided some community infrastructures, like storage facilities, provided produce inspectors to make sure that quality standards are maintained. In the case of the financial institutions, since we are providing subsidized loans to those farmers, we're not able to provide all of the funding needed to rehabilitate. And so the farmers, we are also linked up with the financial institutions to provide loans to those farmers and also to train them on financial literacy to ensure that they know all the regulations in terms of obtaining loans and paying those loans. Thank you.
Okay, since you mentioned the issue of financing, I would like to expand a bit more on this point, which was, heavily discussed this morning. One of the fundamental principles of FOP is that you are combining public and private funds to basically for a common objective. And one of the expectations of IFAD when we developed this idea of FOP is, which by the way is not completely new because builds on something which is well known and well proven, which is the PPP concept. The idea is really to combine public resources with private resources and actually leverage using public funds to basically leverage private investments and private funding. So maybe I would want to ask each of the panelists to expand on this point and explain clearly what is the financing strategy in terms of the 4P. I mean, are we talking about matching grants provided by the project in combination with funds mobilized by the enterprise and by the farmers? Is there a role for the financial sector in your 4P? How do you involve the financial sector? How did you address the issues that were mentioned this morning about, the typical challenges that farmers are facing in accessing financial services? So if you can explain a bit more the financing strategy of your 4P, please.
Cho đến hiện nay thì dự án chúng tôi đã vượt ra khỏi sự mong đợi ngay từ khi thiết kế dự án. Theo như cái thiết kế ban đầu thì chúng tôi kêu gọi cái sự hỗ trợ của người hưởng lợi thì cho đến nay chúng tôi đã đạt được ở cái mức 200% so với cái mong đợi khi mà thiết kế dự án. Thì theo quy định của dự án để mà tham gia vào cái liên kết 4P thì doanh nghiệp cũng như là người nông dân cũng phải đóng góp một cái phần đối ứng, đó là bằng 50% cái giá trị được nhận tài trợ từ dự án. Trong số đó thì có 40% là bằng tiền mặt và 60% là bằng hiện vật. Thì cho đến nay cái sự đóng góp của doanh nghiệp là đã được đạt ở cái mức độ là phải 2,5 lần so với cái quy định của chúng tôi. Còn đối với người nông dân thì đóng góp được khoảng 1,5 lần, tức là gấp 1,5 lần so với cái quy định của dự án. Và cái cách thức, một trong những cái cách thức mà huy động sự tham gia tốt nhất của người nông dân đó là cho họ tham gia vào các cái tổ nhóm. Nếu để họ đứng một mình đơn lẻ thì có lẽ là họ không đủ khả năng để mà đóng góp cái tài chính để mà nhận được cái nguồn tài trợ của dự án. Nhưng mà khi họ tham gia vào tổ nhóm thì những cái người mà khá hơn ở trong nhóm sẽ có thể là bỏ tiền ra để giúp cho những cái người nghèo, người ta có cái tiền để người ta đóng góp đối ứng. Và sau khi mà có cái thu nhập, có cái thu hoạch từ cây con, cây trồng, vật nuôi thì người ta lại lấy cái tiền bán cái cây trồng vật nuôi để trả lại cái tiền cho cái người ở trong nhóm. Và đối với doanh nghiệp thì chúng tôi cũng đã huy động một cách rất là tốt. Chính vì cái bí quyết đó là chúng tôi chọn những cái doanh nghiệp mà có cái khả năng đối ứng và có cái cam kết cao đối với người nông dân, và họ thực sự cần đến sự hỗ trợ của dự án để phát triển những cái ngành hàng mà thuộc tiềm năng thế mạnh của họ. Thì giả sử như muốn nhận 1 đồng của dự án thì họ sẵn sàng bỏ ra 2 đến 3 đồng để có thể thực hiện được cái mong muốn, cái ước mơ của mình.
It's a very good news that compared to the design of the project, we have reached 200% for the contribution from the beneficiaries here, the private sector, the enterprise, and the farmers. Normally, they need to contribute around 50% of the total investment, and 40% of which is in cash, and the other 60% in asset. And for the enterprise, the contribution is 2.5 times compared to the initial expectation of the project. And for the farmer, is 1.5 times compared to the first expectation when we begin the project. In order to do this, to attract the contribution from the farmer, we let them participate in the farmer association or the farmer organization, so that the members with better condition will contribute higher than the other with the poorer condition. And after they get the money from selling products, they can pay back to other members in the groups. And for the enterprise, we select the enterprise which have a good capacity, and they commit to contribute contribute finance in the sub-project. For example, in order to get money from the project, they need to also contribute money in order to develop the commodity that they find that be the strength of the enterprise. And one of the most important things to attract the financial support and the financial contribution is to select the suitable commodity that is the potential or the strength of both the farmers and the enterprise.
Just a follow-up question on this. Are you using the contribution from the enterprise as a criterion for selection? I mean, I'm trying to understand this point. I mean, the more they are willing to contribute to the investment, the more chances they have to get their business plan approved by the project. Is it like that?
Tức là trong cái tiêu chí để lựa chọn cả doanh nghiệp và cả nông dân tham gia, thì chúng tôi đưa ra một cái tiêu chí cứng, đó là phải cam kết đóng góp ít nhất 50% cái giá trị khi mà muốn nhận tài trợ của dự án.
This is one of the criteria, the commitment to contribute financials in the project, in the sub-project.
I want just to clarify this point. Thank you. We move to Georgia.
So as I have mentioned earlier, the cost sharing kind of contribution from beneficiary, let's call so, right, is 60%, and grant facility is 40% out of total value of the proposed project. The 60% is strictly and conditionally is requested to be in cash. In this regard, financial institutions are highly involved, because many of our beneficiaries, more than 50%, are borrowing this money from financial institutions. And of course, for companies, it can be their own savings combined with the loans. And for farmers, these are the loans, and we introduce our programs and projects as well to financial institutions, would it be commercial banks or microfinancial institutions.
Yes, I will add that between private and producers, it's quite simple, because our driving mechanism is prices. So we always monitor prices on the market. So for producers, it will be worth the effort to work with us. And in the long run, we produce the trust to each other. As for the part between public and private, as Katie has told, it was 40/60. Well, it's fair because of not wasting the resources. But 60% if between public and producers, it will be quite tough because producers frequently can't afford 60% of co-funding. In this case, some program of cheap credits was implemented. It's a bit tricky again. Or sometimes private sector as I will intervene and cover this 60% that need to be covered by producers. So this is internal agreement between private and producers. And it showed that there is some missing linkages between understanding of abilities between public and producer parties, where the private sector, this missing linkage can cover.
Yeah, again, as a follow-up question, in a previous conversation with Marina, you explained to me that initially you were reluctant to pre-finance your producer, your suppliers, but the moment that you saw that they were reliable suppliers, now you are including this as an option for your company to pre-finance some of the production with mechanisms of repayment through the delivery of the harvest, which is somehow consistent with the message we got this morning about the fact that you need some time to build trust between the clients and the banks. The banks are reluctant to finance something, or the companies are reluctant to finance somebody who is completely unknown to them. So this role of a project as a bridging between the actors and creating the condition then for the actors to work by themselves is particularly critical. So I don't want just confirmation from you.
Yes, I will just add that it's not only about the trust case. Frequently, producers don't understand that these kind of investments exist, and they are, well, there is a resource like lands and that you can use in the long run, but they can't afford this 60%. So at this point, I intervene. I will use their lands with their work, but I will put my fundings. So the share needed from the program will covered by me. And this is internal agreement between me and producers to build the trust and to fulfill it will be sustained.
Excellent. So trust and capacity and understanding. So somebody this morning was mentioning also financial literacy. So they need the people should understand what does it mean borrowing from a bank. What are the implications? Thank you. Leonard?
Thank you. I will speak very specific for a case of one consortia, which is a paddy consortia called Rafael Group. So what is happening, we have an off-taker. This off-taker is a processor. And within that consortium, you have input supplier, and you have a financial institution. This is a community bank called the Mukoba, Mufindi Community Bank. So from the side of the farmers, they have presented their requirement, financial requirement, to the platform, which is the consortium. And the bank is only willing to give that loan, whatever loan that they've required, provided there is a guarantee. And this guarantee is not provided by the government. The guarantee is provided by the off-taker, who is the Rafael. Rafael guarantee, because he has a contract with the farmer, he guarantees the banks, and then we have a tripartite guarantee where the bank is confident that Rafael will procure the agreed amount of volume from the farmers, and I will talk about it a bit later in terms of how the contract works. And the bank now is able to provide financing to the farmer through the input supply. You see, the farmers are looking for finance to buy inputs. So under the consortia arrangement where we have, and we see that in like 5 consortia that we have, the farmers are accessing input directly from input service provider. They are not getting funds from the bank. Obviously, there is a sitting where they agree in terms of how much, what are the costing, and all this background information has to take place. This is one area in terms of financing. But earlier, you remember I mentioned that there is another investment that the government is doing. There is a matching grant and the investment in terms of storage facility. With the storage facility, because it's a public good, the the community is contributing about 5% only. But for the matching grant, they contribute 25%, and the 75% is provided as a grant this is on case-by-case basis, specific for matching grant, which are involved in the consortium approach. So the important thing that I want to highlight here is under the consortium, we have tried our level best to ensure that the market would behave as it would behave normally without interference from the government. The government is not providing a line of credit. The government is rather making sure that these parties can come together and understand each other. You remember in the morning presentation, somebody said that we don't understand well the farmers. In fact, this is very consistent even in our area. The financial institution do not understand well the smallholder producer. They end up missing all the opportunities and the businesses that they can do with the smallholder producer. But when there is a consortium, that's when they have a platform to understand the level of business and what they can do. So what we have seen is products. The financial institution have come up with the product that suits the members of the consortium. So here we are talking of the funding for working capital. We are talking of the funding for purchase of equipment. The 25% farmers don't have the cash, but they have a business plan which is viable and is financed by the bank. So in two cases, mostly that we are seeing in our consortia is the working capital and the investment for the machinery, to purchase the machinery.
Mohammed?
Thank you. Yeah, the financial strategy that we used in our case was actually to change the culture of dependency on aid. We also wanted to hammer home that agriculture is a business and it must be profitable. So on the part of the public sector, the project and the government, whatever we are providing was a subsidized loan. 40% subsidy, 60% to be paid back. And they should pay back that loan to the financial institutions, and we are able to establish the Agricultural Development Fund to ensure that whatever activities we are doing are sustainable even after the project phase. I think that one is very much important because at the end of the day, projects will come to an end, and for the financial institutions to continue to provide agricultural facilities, they should have some funding. So through the Agricultural Development Fund, the financial institutions should now use those funds to actually expand upon agricultural financing and to make sure that the farmers actually benefit, from the program. They were supposed also to further train them in financial literacy, try to help them to come up with business plans to make sure that whatever they are inputting into the business, at the end of the day, they are able to make a break even and even make a profit. And that will ensure that they will be able to expand upon their farming activities. Thank you.
Thank you, Mohammed. I would like to go back to one point which we didn't cover in the description of the 4P business model that you are supporting your projects, which is the contractual relationship between, in the morning we heard about this tripartite agreement, which seems to be a very effective way to mobilize the actors and also to share risks and to organize the partnership. I would like you to perhaps expand on this point about what are the key agreements in the case of your 4Ps, which are basically the framework in which the actors operate, and then what in particular, what is the relationship between the buyer and the farmers, what kind of key elements you see in the contracts between farmers and these actors, particularly referring to the issue of price, which is an always controversial issue when you discuss with farmers. They always claim the price is too low, even though sometimes they don't know the production cost, so they actually don't know that they're actually making money anyway. But the typical complaint is the price too low. So I want to understand better, in the way you have supported these partnerships, what are the legal instruments that you use to enforce these partnerships? Vietnam, please.
Ở đây thì liên quan đến cái hợp đồng thì giữa người mua và người bán thì chúng tôi là đóng vai trò điều phối giữa doanh nghiệp và người nông dân. Thì họ có cái quan hệ ngang bằng nhau trong cái hợp đồng kinh tế. Và để trước khi hai bên ký được cái hợp đồng kinh tế thì chúng tôi tổ chức những cái cuộc gặp gỡ giữa doanh nghiệp và nông dân để cho họ đàm phán, thương thảo, gặp gỡ nhau để cùng đi đến một cái hợp đồng mua bán thống nhất. Thì để tạo thuận lợi cho doanh nghiệp trong cái quá trình hoạt động tại địa phương thì trước khi mà giúp cho hai bên ký được hợp đồng kinh tế thì chúng tôi sẽ phải có một cái hợp đồng nguyên tắc ký ba bên giữa người mua, người bán và chính quyền địa phương để sau này lỡ có những cái mâu thuẫn hoặc là có những cái tranh chấp thì chính quyền địa phương có thể là đứng ra để giải quyết cho hai bên. Và trong hợp đồng thì một số điều khoản được ghi rất là rõ ràng, bao gồm cái thời gian liên kết là lúc nào, rồi giá cả nó nằm ở trong cái khung ra làm sao, rồi chất lượng của hàng hóa phải đảm bảo theo những cái tiêu chuẩn nào, và số lượng là bao nhiêu đủ để cho doanh nghiệp là chở một chuyến hàng, hoặc là đủ cho doanh nghiệp đảm bảo vận hành được cái công suất của nhà máy. Thì trong cái hợp đồng nêu rất là rõ.
The PMU, the project, take the role as the broker or the facilitator to connect the private sector and the farmer. And before signing the contract, the PMU will have them to meet, negotiate, and agree on some articles in the contract. And we have two types of contract. The first one is the agreement signed between three parties: the buyers, the farmers, the producer, and local authority. And we also have the economic contract signed between the two parties. And in the contract, we have a specification like the quality. They agree on the quality, including the product should meet the specific standards, both in the production, cultivation, or the livestock raising. And they also agree on the quantity specification to ensure enough quantity of input material to be supplied to enterprise for production and processing. And they also agree on the price is determined based on the market price. And they agrees on the floor price and ceiling price, and the product will be sold within that within a frame. Okay. It is to ensure that when the market price is below the minimum price, the enterprise have to buy the product from farmer at the minimum price. And when the market price is higher than the ceiling price, the farmers have to sell the product to enterprise at the maximum price. Yeah, in order to get the agreement in the price, sometimes they have a very the discussion is sometimes very stressful discussion to get the final agreement in the price.
Yes, mechanisms for this would be contract farming or supply contracts, so this is something to be practiced between two sides. However, our role here is to tell about benefits and positive sides of such type of activity and cooperation. But from our side as IFAD, we have our monitoring and evaluation system, And as a precondition, while receiving applications from primary producers or processors, there is the criteria that producers have to argument and convince us that they will be producing for sales and private sector, and private sector has to convince us that they will be expanding and buying from local farmers. And all of these proposals are monitored after we have the contracts for funding signed. Otherwise, beyond this, it is under the market regulations, free market regulations.
I will probably add that and repeat myself, because it's quite simple. Between private and producers, there is formal and informal contract is a price. So as I have observed, it doesn't matter whether you are working on the highly competitive market, as it's with a branch of my company in Turkey, or you're working on at all not competitive market. Prices always should be monitored and should be competitive, because in one case there will be just side selling, in other case producers will not work with this product at all because it doesn't worth effort. In any case, there is a win-win situation to build a long-run relationship. So prices will be monitored, but relationship will be kept in any case.
Thank you. In terms of monitoring the contracts, under the consortium, we have two kind of agreements. First is a memorandum of understanding, which is between the different parties that they were going to collaborate on different levels, and we have different specifications. But with the contract, we have a contract and we are following the government regulation. We are not adding anything new so that to give, maybe to make it easier for parties to get into contract. There are contracts between input supplier and the farmer. There are contracts between the bank and the farmer. There are contracts between the buyer and the farmer. And these are binding contracts. And we have tried to address the issue of side selling because we have capitalized also on another investment that the program has done, which is the warehouse receipt. For instance, in our case, we are mostly talking about cereals. There is something called warehouse receipt. So through the warehouse receipt, farmers who are engaged in the consortium, they are able to access finance at any time through the warehouse receipt system, and they are not in any situation where they will be compelled to do side selling. So we knew of that, and we had tried to cover it earlier. So it's not a problem as far as the consortium is concerned. But the key and the important issue is about the agreement, because this is one of the deliverables. When we are monitoring whether a consortium is working or it's not working, this is a contract, and the MOU is one of the deliverables. And there was a question this morning, somebody, like how long does it take to have a consortium or for peace arrangement up and running? In our case, because we are talking about agriculture, it takes either one season, completely 1 year, or 2 seasons, within a year when you have 2 seasons, because you need to start it from the beginning, pre-season, and go through up to the harvesting and selling. So it takes a minimum of 1 season. So you need to have all these contracts. Thank you.
Okay. Mohammed?
Yep. In our own case, we had a very clear-cut tripartite agreement, clearly showing the roles and responsibilities of the various parties. The public sector, which is government and the project, the financial institutions, and the private sector. For the public sector, they are supposed to actually come up with policies to guide the process, create the enabling environment, provide training and extension services, and also provide rehabilitation funds, which is on a subsidized loan basis. And also the financial institutions are supposed to provide access to loans, train the farmers, and ensure the recovery of those loans. On the part of the public sector, they are supposed to provide ready markets for the farmers to to sell their produce. They are also supposed to make sure that they come up with competitive prices. Normally, we expect them to take the world market price as a base, and then since we are trying to improve upon the quality, to come up with higher prices for organic and certified produce. That is how we are operating.
Excellent. So now, we have covered quite a bit of ground with these questions. Now I have a question for you. Do you want to stop for a little break, which also is helpful for our panelists to stretch the legs? And then we reconvene with the question and answer session with involving you, asking you to ask questions to the panelists. Is it okay with you? So we break for 10 minutes. Thank you.